career process, that combined with portfolios. So we're really going to cover just some strengths of what to put on your resume and some things to really just avoid when it comes to your resume and like portfolio documents. So, and coming back into our partner survey, they gave us some great responses of what they personally look for when they're hiring and things that really turn them off in that process as well. So first, thinking about the strengths, metrics. Definitely, I have seen this a lot as well in my personal experience. People not really quantifying or offering clear metrics on some of their values. So that's kind of the difference in saying, oh yeah, I can, like, I'm good at public speaking, or like, oh, in this specific class, you know, we had to give a speech, versus in this specific class, I give a speech to 45 people, right? Then I'm like, okay, that's a group, right? Or if you are helping with a nonprofit or fundraising, right? Don't just say, oh, we've raised money. Say, okay, you know, I promoted it on social media, on Instagram, and it received X many amount of, you know, impressions and shares, and that, you know, turned into $20,000 being donated. Whatever that metric is, try to expand a little bit. It really helps us see your specific, more unique experience compared to just, oh yeah, I did some fundraising. Also, buzzwords, specifically verbs. Again, think about what verbs, what actions are describing and helping somebody visualize what it is that you know how to do. And thinking about some of the key ones for our field. Dr. McMichael, what are some maybe specific terms or buzzwords that we should be remembering on our resumes?
Well, you want to look and see what buzzwords are in that the job ad. So if they say we want content management, you use the words content management. If they actually, the way things happen these days is your resume goes into some kind of database and it will look to see if you have those particular words in your resume. And then it'll go ahead and pass those resumes on. If you don't have the buzzwords, it won't pass on your resume. So you've got to tailor it to whatever they're asking and the buzzwords they're using in the job ad. That's the most important thing.
Yes, love that. Love that thing to just remember. And certainly even the same type of job between different companies, they might kind of use sort of a little bit different language, and that's a great way to also tailor it. You know, some companies might be real big on maybe collaborating, and other companies might be much more big on, like, I don't know, synergy among teams. Basically, it's the same thing, but use the language that they are using to make sure you get through their filters and that you just really resonate. And this idea, you might see this or hear this, the acronym ATS, that's an applicant tracking system. And that is that kind of auto sort of filtering that's looking for those key words. And sometimes if we have over-designed resumes, it is really hard actually for those ATS systems to recognize what is a heading and an H1, right, versus sort of an H2, and where are the bullet points. So do keep that in mind, make it easy for those programs to find. And one of the things I found as I was sort of job hunting right after graduating, I really started to see where my resume helped and like was a good ATS version, where it wasn't, because a lot of jobs I found now, you can upload your resume, but then it still asks you to fill out sort of all the information in these various little text boxes. And my original resume I had designed, when I would upload it, it was constantly not recognizing the different jobs. And I had to go in and do a lot of editing in the actual like text boxes. And when I changed my resume to be a lot just more standard, have much more clarity in what is an H1, you know, make sure the bullet points were aligned a lot better, it started uploading more correctly. And it'd be like, okay, experience. Here's all my experiences, and I didn't have to edit it so much. And that was something I could see before it even got to that submittal stage. And so if you are applying for jobs that have that type of system, One, definitely real talk, it is annoying to be like, why do I have to type this in? It's on my resume. But if you find that your resume is not importing correctly into those boxes, that's a good tip for you, and hint that maybe you over-designed it and you need to kind of cut back a little bit and make sure that it is a much more sort of straightforward kind of document. Cool. Let's look at some of these.
Haley, your microphone got turned off.
Oh, thank you. Perfect. Hopefully you didn't miss too much. I think I know where it just happened. Okay, so things to avoid. These shouldn't be too surprising, but always good to just keep, at the front of your mind. So first, sort of objective statements. Most of them are like, maybe not. Some people are like, we would like to see a summary of your skills, but that of course is different. So usually by objective statements, there's a habit and sort of in a lot of templates that you see where they say, what is the type of job you want? What is your objective? And people are like, I want to get a job in this industry. It's like, okay, cool.
A note on objectives also, studies show they will not get you a job, but they will lose you a job. So you want to make sure that you are not, that you don't use an objective, because an objective will hurt you, not help, ever.
Yeah. They're just, honestly, like, every time I ever saw one hiring, it's just like, cool. Like, yeah, you applied for this job. Obviously, you want a job in this industry, was my kind of always honest reaction to it. So just leave it off. Instead, use that precious real estate, right? Every kind of area of the page of your resume is really precious, important page real estate. Don't waste it on a vague, basic sort of summary or an objective. You can fill that with something so much more meaningful. Same with pictures of yourself. Don't do that. You don't want to see photos of you right on the resume itself. And you think that's just too creative. Now, you might be going into a slightly more creative organization or industry, but again, it probably is going to get caught up in that ATS system. And sometimes when it's too creative, as a reader, I'm like looking around too much when I just want to find, right, that education, that experience, those skills. Other things, personal info, there is definitely kind of the more traditional, what we always used to sort of teach and say and people expected was things like your address. Now, right, but there's a new trend as it's becoming more digital, like you don't necessarily need to put your address, put your email address certainly so we can contact you, but putting your physical address, I see it in the applicant tracking system. Also, I've never had a need to know their address apart from maybe checking, hey, are you willing to relocate if I do notice that it is like an out of state or out of town. And so you might really consider leaving it off as kind of the new expectation and trend. We just don't really see that as much. What else? Not tailoring, just tailor it. And we have some tips coming up on how you can tailor your resume and make that an efficient and productive process. Anything more than 2 pages definitely is going to be an issue, especially, again, as we see, if it's not directly related. And so, 1 page is great. Make sure it's at least a full page, though. If you are less than a page, instantly when I would see those, it was kind of like, what, like, look how much this person is lacking in experience. So I definitely want to see a nice, robust, healthy page of relevant experiences, even if you need to include more projects because you don't have all of those internships. Make sure you're going through and thinking about how can I fill at least 1 page. More than 1 page, I think it kind of, everyone you ask is a little bit different, but definitely not more than 2 pages, right? If you think, okay, front, back, sure, we could do that if it was being printed. Not that many people ever print them out anymore. 1 actual, copy page is fine. I've personally never had an issue with 2 pages from the hiring side or people that I've been on hiring committees with. But if you're making me scroll through 3+ pages, I definitely have questions of, okay, Does this person not know how to sort of edit for the user? Does this person not know what job they're applying for and what is relevant to this job that they are applying for? And then, of course, grammar. Don't have a bunch of errors, right? This is advanced editing 101. We should definitely take a lot of pass-throughs and reading for that. Any other sort of avoids that maybe you've personally come across or you've seen, Lonnie?
Make sure that everything is scannable. No full paragraphs, no full sentences. They should be able to get a gist just by running their finger down the page. They should have an idea of what you're capable of.
So you are capable. You got this. All right, so now we're just going to talk through just our kind of examples and just kind of try to point out a few little things. And so I, of course, have very recently had to apply for jobs. And so here's kind of a few things that I've sort of recently done. So my resume is 2 pages. However, I have designed it in a way that I could cut off the second page, or if they didn't read the second page, I still feel really good about the content and the experiences and the examples just on page 1. And one of the things I actually recently had to do was drop my 3 college internships to make room for these new actual jobs, including this new kind of contract that I recently received. So right now, we want to see your college experiences, your internships, the clubs, the organizations. But as you continue to get jobs, you continue to get experiences, you might have to drop them and make room. However, you're still going to want to save them, which you'll see why in a great example in a moment. So don't delete them from your life forever, but sometimes you got to make cuts to make sure it stays on a page, because mine was starting to bleed onto a 3rd page with all of those extra internships in there. And one of the reasons I felt comfortable dropping these 3 internships that I had in college is because one was a video editing internship. So I needed that to show people, hey, I do know how to edit videos. I spent a year in this internship doing it. One of them was with the National Forest Service, editing their research reports. Again, I needed that internship to show people that I do know how to do some technical writing and editing. And then the 3rd one was in content marketing, doing more infographics and social media. Again, I needed that internship to show people, hey, I do know how to do these skills. But now I have this technical writing kind of contract that actually captures those 3 skills already, in this now one experience. So I was like, you know what, I have enough things on my page. Similarly, my other job before this one as a strategist required all of those. Video editing, it required some PR, it required some social media, it required some technical editing. And so think about, as you are getting more experience, if there are things that are doubling up on that skill that you could maybe leverage to save some space, and how more current jobs are sort of kind of supplanting and replicating maybe older experiences. One of the other things I started doing on my resume was hyperlinking. So kind of going back to my portfolio and kind of connecting the dots. Again, even if they aren't going to click on these hyperlinks, we all recognize and know bright blue with an underline means something is linked there. So to me, I made that decision to kind of be like, and look, if you wanted the proof, you can get the proof right there. I'm not just saying, some of this stuff. And so that was one kind of example that I really thought about. The last thing that I did that we don't necessarily see a lot, but again, this document should reflect you, your values, the things you are proud of, the skills that you want to make sure people know. And I have done a lot of media kind of experiences, lots of talking. I've been guest on podcasts. I've did a Facebook Live interview to 40,000 people. Those are things that are more unique, even in our field. So I wanted to make sure that was on page 1. Hey, listen, if you need me to go talk to the public, you need me to go represent, the company, the organization, you need somebody to speak on camera, I got you. And so I decided to put that on the front page for these types of positions. Cool. So that's, Lonnie, talk us through your resume and experience. There's some great things to note here as well.
Okay, so my experience is a long time, and my actual work experience was decades ago, but it's still relevant. So there's ways we have to talk about that. If we're walking into a situation where age would be an issue, I would maybe avoid dates, but the experience is still important. The other thing is, and Haley, you want to go on to the next one that
Yeah.
has the two?
Oh, this is our slide.
Oh, this is the,
Oh, yeah.
okay. So I have a resume that is everything I have ever done, everything I can think of. It is 3 pages or it's 3 pages long. It's, very thorough. It covers both academia and the workforce. So what I do when I go to apply, say I'm going to go look for a freelance position, I take my resume and I edit it down. I pick what is important in there. That is using the same buzzwords, or I change the words to make sure they're the same buzzwords. That is the things they're looking for, the skills they're looking for. I have a lot of skills. Is every company going to need this? Probably not. So I get it down to that 1 page. You want a full page resume, but you don't want to go over at this point in your careers. Really, you shouldn't probably have a 2-page resume unless you've done a lot. I cut it down to that 1 page to get their attention. And then if they're interested in interviewing me, I'll send them the complete resume that has everything I've ever done.
Perfect. Yes. And one thing that is so great to just keep in mind, right? The job of your resume is not necessarily to get you hired, right? Your resume is working hard to get people interested enough to interview you. And so definitely keep that in mind, right? You want to make sure people are saying, huh, this person has a really interesting kind of history and record and some definite experiences and skills. We want to talk to them more. And so make sure your resume is working hard for you to do that. Just a few other kind of things from our partner survey, right? They want it to be easy to read. I mean, that goes back to, our foundations of TCID. People don't really want to read it, so make it as easy as possible for them to find that information. And think about the acronyms as well. Just because it's familiar to us doesn't necessarily mean that that person is going to know what UCCS is. If they're in Colorado Springs, an employer, maybe. If you're applying even in Denver or in the Front Range or out of state, they might not actually recognize UCCS or some of those acronyms. So, spell it out if it's that important for it. Little visual interest. This person, every experience is going to be a little bit different. Ultimately, your resume needs to be a reflection of you. You could make it a little visually interesting. It seemed to work, right, for this person. But I would definitely say that probably is only going to work if you're applying to a small enough company where probably an actual person is going to give you that first round and filter and pass. Possibly. So you can make that decision for yourself. I'd say safer is less designed, however.
Also remember your audience. If you are trying to get a job with a military contractor, that thing needs to look almost old-fashioned. You need to stick very much with the traditional. If you are applying to someplace like Google or Apple or some up-and-coming and trendy company, you can get more creative. In fact, you probably should get more creative.
Yes, definitely. And of course, the age-old go talk to actual people. It's who you know, certainly is always going to help out if you actually have a little bit of those connections. We could always unpack some of the social problematics of the who you know, not what you know principle, but at the end of the day, try to get networking, try to be involved, get your kind of your face, your name out there so that way people can recognize you certainly. Cool. Okay, so before we go into, and we're going to separate you just into some little small groups, either partners or threes, what questions are just in your mind about what we've talked about in the first half of this workshop? What can we just circle back around, speak more on, talk about more examples? What questions are in your mind? And if you do want to, if you are comfortable, sharing, you can definitely unmute too. Ghostwriting I should do or ignore. Ooh, I would love to kind of expand on what you mean by that.
I think I know what you're talking about, where you
Okay.
put the buzzwords in and put it in reverse text so or nobody can see it. Is that what
Yes.
you're discussing? If
Yes.
you're talking about that, if it ends up in an ATS, those words are going to be visual and it's not going to look good. So it's a chance if you're doing that. If you're able to upload a PDF, you'll have less of a chance of having that happen. But if you're having to input like a Word file or a text file, it's going to show. Now, if you meant ghostwriting as in doing writing for somebody else and they get the credit, then yeah, take that and compliment, that should be on your resume too.
Yeah. Okay. Definitely. And yeah, I'd also add, if you kind of need those buzzwords, again, there's probably a project, an experience, like a reason you should have them, front center in kind of bold, or like black ink and readable. Right? Because you don't sell yourself short. Surely you have a story, a project, a time where you did that kind of buzzword, you did that action, and think about, how you can make sure you really show people that you have that skill and action. It's really
A
good.
lot of time it's about rewording or reframing, it's not, especially that in fact, if you're having to put a lot of words in that you don't have on your list, you might not be ready for that job.
Yeah.
So, it could be seen as a form of lying. And if you have that, you just may need to reframe it and rewrite it, just change how you're talking about it.
Absolutely. And one thing that I did as I was, kind of getting ready to sort of graduate, I was like a year out, a junior, back even when I was an undergrad before I decided to go to grad school. And I put my resume into a word cloud generator, just copied all the text in just to see, what words were popping up. And then I compared that word cloud to some of the jobs that I thought, at the time that I really, wanted, and the types of, right, back to our very, very, very first question this morning, what verbs, what actions do I hope to do in my kind of life? And that really helped me seeing that word cloud. Okay, I already have a lot of these skills written on my resume. Then there were other ones where I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure I've done that. How can I go back to make sure those words show up? And then things that I'm like, oh, this word doesn't appear at all in my word cloud. I need to go out and find a way to get that experience. So you might think about doing that, at this stage. Yeah.
I think Haley gave a great example of this. She has her portfolio listed right underneath her name. And for our field, I think that's probably a good idea. In other fields, you might put it at the bottom, but for our field, your examples are so incredibly important that your portfolio probably needs to go very close to the top where it's easy for people to find. And that you need to have it placed somewhere where people can get to it with a link. These days, really, you need to have a portfolio that can be linked in.
Yeah, absolutely. And in our third session, when we talk about interview prep, we're going to talk more about portfolio, since we usually then need to explain the portfolio. Absolutely. And we might start finding the company in the application system might even have a specific place where they say link your portfolio or upload examples of your writing. I've definitely come across that quite a bit. And so, yeah, I like linking it on my resume so that way they could, get to it right away. But I've definitely seen a lot of jobs where they really want it, and so common in our field, they will literally be like, submit your portfolio or upload examples of this type of writing? Great question.